On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, Customs and Border Protection are cracking down on e-commerce. Hey, what's going on with shipping? Sal Mercogliano here. So the other day we did a video where we were talking about container freight rates and the spike that we're seeing as a result of the diversion around Africa because of the attacks waged by the Houthi. Well, there's a story this week in Loadstar, a great online source that allows you to really look at all aspects of the global supply chain. And they're talking about CBP, Customs and Border Protection, scrutinizing small shipments, what they call de minimis shipments, coming into the United States, largely by air, but also by sea. And what impact is that going to have on you, the consumer, the shipper, the carrier of goods? What is the big long-term impact that we can expect to see? Because if this is happening now on air travel, it's only a matter of time till it'll happen on seaborne trade. And e-commerce is the way we live. We order everything through this gadget. So what does this mean for us? If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So here's the story over at Loadstar. Customs brokers under scrutiny as US CBP confirms e-commerce crackdown. So Alex Levan had this story. They're quoting the CBP acting commissioner, Troy Miller. In it, he noted that the agency is, quote, taking action to ensure compliance and minimize the exploitation of the small package or de minimis environment. De minimis means anything under $800 shipped by an individual each day. It used to be $200, but that was increased back in 2016. Goes on, while the majority of the brokers, carriers, and supply chain businesses that participate in CBP's entry type 86 test are compliant with applicable laws, we are enhancing our enforcement efforts to ensure that all participants are held accountable when they are not. To date, CBP has suspended multiple customs brokers from participating in the entry type 86 test. And the one that has been publicly named so far is Seco Logistics. They told their customers, not in an official statement, but in an email to their customers, that it's incredibly disappointed by this unfortunate decision, and it added that it had a 99.99% compliance rate. We intend to press for reinstatement as soon as possible. This is leading to a series of inspections on shipments and de minimis cargo coming in particular from freighter flights originating in mainland China, and congestion is said to be building at customs warehouses at Los Angeles International Airport. Now, they're saying freighters here. They're talking about aircraft freighters, not ship freighters. So when it comes to e-commerce, electronic commerce, this is what CBP put out as their strategy. As it's a growing segment of the U.S. economy, and it has been for the last several decades, CBP must adapt to changing ways. Business conducted due to the growth of low-value packages, which e-commerce primarily drives. Their strategy strengthens its ability to protect the health and safety of American citizens and the U.S. economy from non-compliant goods. CBP defines e-commerce as a high-volume, low-value shipments entering the port limits of the United States. To achieve that strategy, CBP put out 4 goals. One is to enhance legal and regulatory authorities to better posture CBP and interagency partners to address the emerging threats. Second, to enhance and adapt all affected CBP operations to respond to emerging supply chain dynamics created by the rapid growth of e-commerce. 3, drive private sector compliance through enforcement resources and incentives. And 4, facilitate international trade standards for e-commerce to support economic prosperity. Now, there's obvious challenges that they face in this. One of the biggest ones is the increasing trade volume. Since 2000, the number of Americans shopping online has increased fourfold, and COVID magnified that massively. E-commerce hit levels that were not expected to be reached until a decade later. But everybody shifted over to this, and especially in this area of goods valued under $2,500. Now, de minimis shipments are under $800, but we're seeing this growth. You're seeing dangerous and non-compliant shipments take place. We see that in early 2017, small packages, special operations at international mail facilities in New York, they seized more than 5 pounds of fentanyl, along with almost 1,300 other non-compliant shipments. That has spiked tremendously. It's one of the reasons we're seeing this crackdown. And then third is consumer awareness. Now, Loadstar has been following this continually. This is a story from a few days ago. Customers, brokers caught up in U.S. crackdown on Chinese e-commerce traffic. This is specifically discussing a seizure of about 1,000 tons of goods that was coming in via e-commerce. It talks about Seiko and their participation in the program and their suspension for 90 days. The story highlights what they call two big issues brought to bear by an import broker in and around Los Angeles airport. One is customs discovering lots of drugs, fentanyl, and drug-making tools in e-commerce shipments. The second is shippers declaring the value of goods to be less than $800, and that amount is actually more than that. And this has resulted in Customs and Border Protection now inspecting every single e-commerce shipment coming from mainland China on freighters, leading to airport congestion, delays and cancellation, and suspension of some flights. All freighters coming into LAX from mainland China, many of them of which are Shein and Temu, are going straight to customs warehouses for full inspection, and CBP is finding a lot of illegal stuff. There's fentanyl, drug-making equipment, and misdeclaration of value to meet the de minimis threshold. Story includes a statement from a charter broker saying that they were really nervous. Goes on to say Temu has got a lot of capacity booked until the end of the year, and they're starting to get very nervous about that. I've just received a note from our Chinese government guy that says, let us use an old Chinese saying, let the arrow fly a little, then we'll know what happened. Carriers such as CMA CGM, which has an air cargo business, which they invested in during the supply chain crisis, was planning to begin flights from China to the US, but now that'll likely be paused until later in June. Goes on here, sources said the U.S. was unlikely to stop checking shipments anytime soon, particularly following the discovery of fentanyl and drug-making equipment. Tighter security on the Mexican border has led drug smugglers to identify other routes, and air cargo is now one of them. So you're asking yourself, wait a minute, Sal, why are you bringing this up on what's going on with shipping? You do global maritime shipping, you don't do air shipments. Well, if de minimis shipments are going to get held up coming in via air, they're going to shift over to the sea, because containers do not get inspected at the level that you tend to think they're inspected at. And it has a lot to do just with sheer volume. This is the call sheet for containers coming into the port of Los Angeles. So just this week, week 22, May 26th to June 1st, 91,881 containers came into the port of Los Angeles. The next week it's going to be 98,000. The following week, 128,000 containers. Put that into context. There are 10,080 minutes in a week. If you're shipping 91,000 containers into the port of Los Angeles, you would have to be inspecting 9 containers a minute to fully inspect a container. And most containers don't get cracked open at all. They run through scanners, they run through x-ray machines so that they can see what's in them to make sure they kind of match up with what their manifest says. But a very small percentage, we're talking about just a few percentage points, are actually ever cracked open and open. And even when you open a container, all you see is the front of the container. You don't see what's down the next 20, 40, or 45 feet. This is almost impossible. And if you start inspecting the de minimis shipments coming into the U.S. by air, then a lot of that cargo and illegal cargo is going to shift over to ocean travel. And this could have an impact. We're seeing talks already about trade restrictions, revitalization of tariffs. It is an election year. In case you didn't know, there's going to be an election between two young, strapping Americans who are going to run for president. The same two that ran 4 years ago are going to run again. They are going to be using this issue as a massive point of contention. And again, if this rolls over into ocean shipping, it's going to have a big problem. If you want to follow this series, head on over to Loadstar. They have a great e-commerce series where they have been tracking this nonstop, and I really strongly recommend it, especially if you are looking at small-scale shipments coming into the United States, because these have become the norm. This is from Customs and Border Protection, shows you some of the statistics here in terms of de minimis shipping. I have a little problem here with CBP is they're saying that this is a volume measurement, but they don't give you a guide for what they're measuring it in. So I'm not sure what their millions are in, if it's cubic feet or if it's in tons. I don't know. But the key here is if you look at total de minimis shipments, they have been increasing quite a bit. As a matter of fact, over 1 billion last year, we're at the mid-year point at 705 million. So you're definitely seeing an increase, and the value there is tremendous. But notice where most of that gets shipped. It's on air. Air is where you tend to see it. Not so much on vessels, but again, you can expect to start seeing a shift if this happens. Dealing with e-commerce is largely air more than anything else. However, we do see shipments coming in by sea, and now with issues of tariffs and a much more kind of ramped up attitude toward China, we could expect to see some slowdown in commerce coming in through China as tariffs and trade restrictions potentially become a hot point during the upcoming political election. What does that mean? You can expect to see some freight increasing from Asia over to the United States to beat this prior to the election cycle. This is something we tend to see a lot. We saw it during 2016. We saw it in 2020. We'll probably see it again here. Also, I want to make you aware, working on a video here that I think you're going to find really interesting. Allianz has come out with their annual report on safety and shipping review. Really interesting, talking about, are ships safer than they have been in the past? I know it's very easy to sit there and say, well, no, Sal, we took out a bridge in Baltimore. We've had ships on fire. But this review is a great breakdown of not just what's happening afloat, but what is happening regarding the different types of ships and where in the world do these accidents take place. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit that super thanks button down below. Head on over to Patreon, become a yearly or monthly subscriber, and most importantly of all, share this across social media. Until our next video, this is Sal, signing off.